Yes, here we are, Robert Nielsen again, pretending he's actually an informed person. What is it about statists that makes them feel they get to be completely arrogant about things they haven't even done basic fact-checking on, especially when they're trying to sling ad hominem attacks at libertarians? Yes, once again, there's nothing in here that hasn't been debunked 18 different ways from Tuesday, but we'll go through it anyway. In economics textbooks, there is a simple story told about racism. And of course, he knows better. We've got to stand up to these experts. It explains how the free market punishes prejudice of any kind, and instead builds an environment where all people compete equally regardless of their background. The explanation is simple. Any business that refused to serve certain customers would earn less profit than a more tolerant rival. If you refuse to hire the most competent job applicant due to their race, gender, sexuality, etc., then they will work for your competitors, or set up their own business and undercut you. And we've actually seen this happen over and over again. So let's watch as Nielsen tries to deny observed fact. Economists don't mean anything bad when they teach this theory as fact. Yes, he's using an argument straight out of the creationists. Oh, they teach evolution as a fact when it's a theory. Again, there is no intellectual difference between creationists and statists. No difference at all. Nielsen just gave us one more undeniable data point showing it. They probably just want to apply economic theory to real life to show its relevance to students. They probably think it has a positive message by depicting discrimination as irrational. However, what they don't realize is the darker implications of the theory. Wow, he actually thinks there's something wrong with using competition to punish racists in the market. You see, if the free market eliminates racism, straw man, no one ever claimed it eliminated it entirely. The free market punishes racist behavior and incentivizes inclusiveness. Then there is no need for the state to be involved. Right, there isn't. And that's what really sticks in your craw, isn't it, Nielsen? If the free market is left alone, then all racism will completely disappear. In fact, we don't need to take any action against discrimination because the market does it for us. The free market is how we take action against it. Just what do you think the free market is? It's just people, like you and me, making decisions about how we're going to serve one another. The free market is us. If there are any differences in pay or employment based on race, they must be due to skill and productivity. They can't be due to bigotry. And this has been shown to be the case over and over again. And it's due to things that you favor, like minimum wage, which has been shown over and over again to disproportionately harm the employment prospects of minorities. That inhibits their ability to develop job skills and work history, which means they can't demand wages as high as they would be able to otherwise. All sorts of other things that leftists like Nielsen favor contribute to this problem too, including public utilities, zoning, labor laws, housing projects, all sorts of things. But go through his blog and see if you can find him complaining about these even once. Libertarians used this very argument to propose repealing anti-discrimination civil rights legislation. The portion of the Civil Rights Act that stops businesses from discriminating wasn't there originally in the stronger version of the act that the Democrats opposed and filibustered, and you won't find anyone in the civil rights movement calling for it because they understood quite well that segregation was the law. It was the laws that they were opposing. That section didn't show up until the watered-down version the Democrats pretended to get behind. It was put in by the Democrats not because they actually needed to stop businesses from discriminating, but because they were trying to make the bill so odious that it wouldn't pass. They knew what a terrible section it was, and that was the point. They were trying to turn people against the act, and they failed. And you hear similar arguments to oppose laws mandating bakers must sell to gay couples. Yes, he's spreading the same lie I debunked all that time ago. I'm just going to put a link to the video in the description so I don't have to repeat myself. Or that women must receive the same pay as men. And how many times has the federal government passed this kind of law? Starting in the 1970s? The very first act signed into law by Obama was one of these, and now they've introduced yet another one. So why haven't any of these existing laws stopped businesses from discriminating against women? Because that isn't what's going on. What's happening is an earnings gap, not a wage gap, caused by women making different career choices. And this has been confirmed time and time again by study after study after study, including ones from the Obama administration. I covered this in the Idiot Extraordinaire segment of my podcast back in June of 2012. Again, the link is in the description. So all of that completely invalidates his next 3 paragraphs, where he bases everything on the claim that all of this repeatedly verified information just isn't true. And things don't get any better for him after that. A major problem for hiring employers is a lack of information about potential employees. There is no way to know to properly assess the skills and suitability of a candidate until they actually start working. Wow, does this guy know absolutely nothing about running a business? Clearly not, as this, on top of the crap he said in the past, shows. It's called work history. It's called references. Idiot! Next paragraph. Businesses can discriminate without even realizing it. Oh, for crying out, seriously? And again, this paragraph shows he doesn't know the first thing about running a business or about hiring procedures. Any business that relies on things like familial connections for employment doesn't stay in business long because they're severely limiting the talent pool they have to choose from. There is a principle known to employers called the 70-20-10 principle, which is a rough rule of thumb that 70% of skills are learned on the job, 20% from coworkers, and 10% from education. As so much of the necessary skills are learned on the job, most new hires are near useless and must be trained in everything. Right, and this is an equalizer since things like education don't matter as much. But when people like you come in and start screaming for things like higher minimum wages, higher payroll taxes, mandatory benefits, and other things that make it more expensive to hire people, then businesses are going to rely more and more on things like education. And for reasons I mentioned earlier, that severely inhibits the ability of minorities to find work. Racism doesn't just affect people at the hiring stage, it begins long before then. Racism doesn't have much of an effect at all at the hiring stage, as I've established, and how on earth are businesses responsible for things that happen before then? Racial minorities often have poorer quality of schools and lack resources that give wealthier children an advantage, such as private tutoring or funds for college. Oh, okay, so you admit that your wonderful public education system is a horrendous failure and keeps blacks and other minorities down by forcing them into failing schools. So when are we gonna see you advocating for school choice? The rest of this paragraph is basically whining about people in wealthy families having an advantage, but this is only an advantage in a society where government, through minimum wage and other things I've mentioned, keeps minorities down. In a free market, the story of rags to rags in 2 generations plays out all the time. Being from a wealthy family just doesn't give you that much of an advantage without it being systemically enforced through regulation. And even in today's hyper-regulated economy, it's still the case that 92% of millionaires and 62% of billionaires are self-made. So shut it! Discriminated groups can only set up competing businesses if all groups are equally wealthy. Wrong, 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 wrong! One's wealth only matters when people like you decide that businesses need to be regulated all over the place. One of the reasons Jim Crow laws needed to be passed was because of how easy it was for blacks to hang out their own shingles. When all you have to do to go into business is just declare that you're in business, how equally wealthy people are doesn't mean a thing. A society can unintentionally be discriminatory if the initial structure was racist. Oh, you mean like a society that has public utilities, zoning, minimum wage, labor laws, housing projects, payroll taxes, mandatory benefits, progressive income taxation, and so many regulations that businesses spend more money complying with them than they make in profits? Yeah, that is a problem. The sad fact is, I'm sure that when Nielsen preens in the mirror like all narcissists do, thinking how he's so much better than those horrible libertarians, he doesn't realize that it's his policies that are the main reasons minorities keep being held back in this country. Even welfare. Before that, black families were stable, upwardly mobile families, even with the economic drag of legally mandated segregation. Since welfare, black families have been all but destroyed, with blacks kept poor in single-parent households that have to live on multiple part-time jobs. And the reason why that's so sad is, if Nielsen had bothered to ask basic questions about his fundy religion, he would have found all of this information and more at his fingertips. The fact that he apparently hasn't even tried to do this shows that he doesn't really care about minorities at all, just how he can use them as fodder to maintain his own hateful, bigoted, privileged cult. He might not be racist himself, but he is a useful idiot for racists. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and share this video everywhere you can. You can also use the links below to support this channel via PayPal, Crypto, Patreon, Subscribestar, or even for free with the Airtime extension. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay strong and be free.